Hey, what's going on, everybody? You know how we do. Let's just get into it today. Today's video, I think I'm going to entitle it 50 Shades of Racism. So let's just get into it. I've changed up everything a little bit to try and get things about more action and just more general topics that we can use to try and convince people that are not MAGA to vote. And one of those things is like just racism in itself. I feel like we've kind of failed Gen Z and younger generations about showing what racism is, right? I mean, I feel like a lot of older generations, we get it, we understand, um, and we know a lot of these dog whistles. And I feel like a lot of the younger generation just doesn't get it. And they've been spoon fed a lot of stuff that makes them feel that racism isn't what it really is, right? And that somehow the goals being accomplished, like our history's being erased, and so people are just looking at things without a context, and just kind of being wishful that racism was away, like kind of being embarrassed about Black people in certain conditions that we're at today, and not wanting to be associated with some of those stereotypes without looking at any of the historical context or how those things affect us and impact us on our everyday lives. And it really, I feel like that is a crucial thing to really communicate to those individuals that are not voting or those individuals that are voting alternatively, and are not understanding that sadly in this nation, that particularly people of color, we need to be voting along those lines because the other side is clearly voting along those lines. And I just want to go into the 50 shades of racism. And because I feel the issue is in America, and racism seems to be racism against Black people, pardon me, not against other things. I think against Jewish people, against Asian people, and even some things against gay people, you know, it's not racism. Um, it's pretty established, right? And I feel like that group is able to determine what's racist for them, but not Black people, right? We literally are bombarded every day about people in the Republican Party trying to say that things aren't racist, trying to say Trump's not racist, trying to say Stephen Miller's not racist, trying to deny that the Republican texts that came out talking clearly with racist epithets were not racist. And I just want to say, like, how is this possible? Like, how do we live in a nation where, like, nothing can be racist, right? And I feel like this is where it goes to the 50 degrees of racism, because all racism isn't created equal. Right. And I think the only racism, like I'm going to give two things. One, the audacity that any other group of people thinks that they can determine what is racist to Black people other than Black people. Like you have Black people, Black scholars, Black universities, Black think tanks telling you this is racist and this is why. But you'll have white people, somebody say that's not racist. Well, I just don't believe it. Like, well, who are you? How do you get the ability to determine what is racist to people, the affected party? That doesn't apply to any other group. Some of the ones I just mentioned, but I digress. That is like the first issue. Like that is literally a clear example of racism and white privilege, that you can determine what you think is offensive to the other party or what is a legitimate offense to the other party. Like that is literally like a clear admittance of racism and white supremacy, that you think that you're able to determine even the other people's offense. But what I want to start with is like the degrees of racism. It's like the only racism that I believe that most people in this country can acknowledge is what I'll call first degree racism, right? Let's put it in categories like we put murder, right? Because there's like first degree, second degree, third degree, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, right? Because we recognize that while all those things have varying degrees of severity, right? The thing that is still prevalent is that a murder has occurred, a death has happened, right? And so I think we need to look at racism in that way, right? That although there may be different degrees of such, a racist action still occurred, right? And I feel like the only racism that people accept in this nation is somehow first degree racism, which means it's premeditated. You know what I'm saying? It's all clear. Like they're saying, I hate niggers, da 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 da. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I did this because I think I'm better than Black people. Fuck them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and then they carry out an act. I feel like that is literally the only way that some people will agree that something is racism. Anything outside of that, it is questionable, right? You know what I'm saying? Even though it could be clear, and we all know what's going on, right? We all know the systemic things that go on that are clearly racist. But unless it's first degree, people don't acknowledge it, and people try to diffuse it, and people try to defend it, and people just act like it's an opinion. It's like, no, absolutely not. Just because, someone can commit something racist accidentally, right? Something can be racist and like subconsciously it can happen. people commit racist acts that are part of society that like non-intentional, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, or a racist act could come out, it couldn't be premeditated, it could be just something that just resulted. Or your policy, that could be a racist policy, you might not have said, hey, I'm going to design this policy to negatively affect black people. However, if that policy just so happens to affect black people negatively by like a 90% grip, that policy is racist. Even though you didn't say, hey, I'm doing this to be racist, if the impact is racist, then it is racist. So I feel like we need to begin to stop or start, pardon me, talking about racism in different ways to suggest that your intention is of little consequence. There are many degrees of racism, and whether you acknowledge it, agree with it, or anything doesn't really matter. And we as people of color need to take over this notion and to stop allowing people that are a part of the impacted class to even believe they have a leg to stand on. Let them say, like, hey, I could never say what's impactful against white people. I could never say what's impactful against an Asian person. That they can determine what their own level of racial offense is, right? They don't need it to be validated or justified in the general consensus of white people. And I feel like that's just another form of like we have to justify our oppression. We have to justify it. And look, it's like happening with the civil rights legislation. Like all that's going down because they don't believe that racism is going on in America, right? The Supreme Court's judgment to as to why they're dismantling the Civil Rights Act is because they think we're post-racist today. Really? You're telling me in Trump America today, where literally the young Republicans were just so, like shown calling for gas chambers, saying black people are watermelon people, and all those things, like clearly blatantly racist things. But even the president and the vice president can't even debunk that. Like over half of Republicans have not debunked that and called that racist. They haven't even said anything about it. Like, what? So I think it's pretty clear, but the action point in this is just trying to get us to change the game and how we talk about stuff and to get our young people, particularly, to understand that racism comes in many shapes and forms and that we need to educate people about making sure that we can make sure our government stands up to this, acknowledges our voice, and that it is something that is put into the future before our books get erased, our culture gets erased, and then they try and bake every negative thing that they've tried to in the cake, bake everything into the cake that they've done about black people, trying to make where we live, our crime rates and things of that nature to have no context at all. And what it does is just it causes young people to reject black culture. Right? It calls us to reject these things about being associated and grew up with these things because they're not seeing the pride, they're not seeing the positivity, they're not seeing the true culpability of the reasons of why the things that they're ashamed of and where they really result from. And I think we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our people to really be those that make those cultural shifts so that we can stand up against that fight that's always going to come. Until next time.